Hi, Ben Constable with you from Spark Systems. Today I'm previewing the new model patterns and perspectives in the Enterprise Architect 14 release. The purpose of this session is to show you how version 14 will help you to kickstart and streamline your modeling projects. You may have seen our last webinar, which showed how the version 14 release helps you to focus EA's toolset in order to fulfill your modeling intent. And achieving that obviously involves some of the new diagramming and editing tools. So in this webinar, I'm exploring these two aspects of the release. Specifically, I want to show how the new perspectives combine with the impressive array of new model patterns in version 14 to make your modeling efforts more productive. I'll start by explaining what the new perspectives are and how to use them. Then we'll explore the enhanced model wizard and some of its model patterns as they relate to a given perspective, including some analysis patterns and architecture-related patterns. As we discuss these patterns, I also want to show you how to apply the new meta model views to help guide and focus your editing of the models. Finally, I'll introduce the new model-based guidance patterns, which form a kind of checklist for various tasks you perform in EA. I'm running an EA 14 pre-release here, and I want to use the new Perspectives feature to focus our modeling. So you can access that from the start page here by clicking on the perspective icon, or you can access it from the top right of screen using the perspective icon here. So what you do when you click on one of these buttons is to invoke a list of perspectives, and what these really represent is the set of modeling technologies that relate to the task that you're undertaking at any given time. You could think of it as your modeling mindset, if you will. You're telling EA what you're interested in, and it'll offer up the right set of tools for you. Now, no matter what perspective you choose, it's always going to be visible if you have the status bar open here. So just at the bottom of the screen, you can see I'm currently in a requirements perspective. Well, in our last webinar, I showed how the perspectives have a positive impact on at least 4 aspects of EA's user interface. So I want to consider those briefly now, just to review. So the first is the selection of model patterns, those that are available in the model pattern wizard. Also, the diagramming toolbox, that's what you're using to build up your visual models with. For those that are using stereotyped elements, the perspective you choose will restrict which stereotypes are available to select from. And when you create a new diagram, it'll impact the selection of diagrams, those that you have available. So let's consider each of these in turn now, starting with the model pattern wizard. So what I'm going to do is change perspective, and that will invoke the model pattern wizard. And I want to concentrate now on some whiteboarding, so really high level analysis here. So from the analysis category of perspectives, I choose whiteboard, and that invokes the model wizard. And you'll see that I just have a reduced set of patterns available to me in the model wizard here. I've got a couple of types of whiteboard patterns. So as I click on one of these patterns, you see that the perspective is previewed for me, so I actually get a visual on what the perspective is going to look like, and I get some detailed instructions, which we're going to have a look at a little bit more. Now, if I change perspective, say I go to, like, I don't know, business process modeling, have a look at that, you'll see that that actually affects the set of patterns that's available in the wizard, like so. All right, so that's the first area, and we're going to come back and have a good look at the model pattern wizard shortly. The second area that I mentioned was the diagramming toolbox. So that's what I'm using to actually build up my visual model. So I'm going to invoke the diagram toolbox here. And you see, of course, I've got the elements that are relevant to this mind mapping diagram. That's fine. But when I want to choose a different toolbox page, I'm restricted to just a set of toolbox pages relevant for business process modeling in this case, because that's the perspective that I currently have. So it's going to impact the selection of tools that you have at that given time. For those, as I mentioned, that are doing stereotypes or using stereotypes on their elements, so if I just right-click and bring up the properties of this mind map topic here, so you see it has a stereotype of topic. If I wanted to edit that, and click to edit, because I'm in the BPMN perspective, I just again have a reduced set of profiles that I can choose stereotypes from, and that of course includes the mind mapping profile that I'm using, so I could easily choose a new stereotype without having the full gamut that Enterprise Architect provides, which could be overwhelming depending on what you're trying to do. The fourth area that I mentioned is when you're creating a new diagram, your perspective will impact the selection of diagrams that's put before you. So if I go to the project browser and under my demo sandbox here, imagine I wanted to create a new diagram. Well, I click the new diagram icon, and the perspective has an impact on the set of diagram types that is presented to me. So you see, because I'm again in the BPMN perspective, I obviously have all of those diagram types available to me, and others that may be related to this perspective. So again, it's a reduced set. Now, if I wanted to use any other kind of diagram, say there's a kind of engineering diagram I wanted to create, even though I was in the BPMN perspective, I could use this select from drop down to have a look at all of the different kinds of diagrams that Enterprise Architect provides. And there's a considerable array of those within any given category of perspectives. Now I want to show you how these perspectives work in concert with the new model patterns in the Model Pattern Wizard in Enterprise Architect 14. So I'm going to go and do some whiteboard modeling. As I showed you before, I'm just going to use the perspective button here to change to Analysis Whiteboard. So that's my perspective. When I click on this, Enterprise Architect will bring up an appropriate set of patterns for me to choose from. So I'll just take the first of the whiteboard patterns, and again, as you saw before, when I click on the pattern, I get a preview, so I know what this pattern is going to look like in my model when I instantiate it. But I also get that detailed guidance telling me about the purpose of this kind of pattern, when can it be used, and what kind of things can you do with it. I also have some handy links to relevant help documentation. So there's a link there on how to use the hand-drawn mode and other aspects of whiteboarding. I can just control-click on that to invoke Enterprise Architect's online help. I will also put a set of suggested workspace layouts for you, and what that will do is just recommend what views you should have open to help you work with the pattern that you've chosen. So that should be in place before official launch. You'll notice too that Enterprise Architect is prompting me as to where to place this pattern, and whatever package I've had open when I open the Model Pattern Wizard, that's where it'll put it, unless I override it just by opening up the navigator here and selecting another package if I wanted to do that. Before I create a pattern, I can choose to customize the pattern on import. I'm not going to worry about doing that. I just want to create the pattern as is in my model now. So I click Create Pattern. And you see that in my demo sandbox here, Enterprise Architect has instantiated the pattern. So I can go ahead and open up that diagram, just double click there, and just really, as we saw in the preview, Enterprise Architect has created a whiteboard diagram that I can now go ahead and make my own. So I'm going to rename this cloud, for example. Let's just call it my cloud. That'll do. And as I open up the toolbox, you can see I can continue on modeling other concepts as well using the whiteboard toolbox pattern, create some lines, boxes, and so forth. I could choose to show the name for that element. Under whiteboard, name visible, yes. Alright, so you can see I'm on my way now. I'm creating my own whiteboard diagram, and the pattern has given me a real kickstart to do that. So I just want to point out before we move on that the Model Pattern Wizard is actually a dockable view. So I can use it in the main tab like this, or I can actually tear it off, just left click and hold and tear it off and place the Model Wizard anywhere else I want it on screen. I could even just snap it to the right there, so that as I build up my model, I've got some in-place guidance here. All of that documentation with respect to the pattern is available as I'm working alongside that. I'll just put the wizard back in the middle there, because we're going to refer to that fairly frequently. I want to consider another example pattern now. Say I'm more interested in requirements engineering, or perhaps use case modeling. So I want to instantiate one of those patterns and show you how it works. Well, I'll change my perspective. I could access use case modeling either through the UML behavioral category, or perspective rather. or I can access it from analysis requirements. That's also got some of the patterns that are relevant. So if I'm looking for use case diagrams, you see I've got two patterns that are provided for me. There's a basic use case pattern, or there's this structured use case model, and that starts to include some of the concepts like an include and exclude for reuse. So I'll just go ahead and create that pattern. I want to create it in my demo sandbox, so I select that in the project browser, click create, and then just go ahead and open up the diagram, and you see I've got a nice use case model started off for me. Now of course I want to customize this to my own system. Say I'm doing a webinar management system, as you've seen in one of our previous sessions. Well, I can go ahead and just rename the elements in place, just F2 to in place edit. So my first actor would be an attendee, so that's you, and we also need a presenter, that's me. Okay, and so I'm on my way. I can also access any of the use case elements, and they have another handy kickstart for me. If I right click and access the properties, you'll see under the scenarios tab, this pattern has already put in some scenario stubs for me. So that interaction between the actor or the user and the system, as shown in the second step there. So I can just go ahead and edit these as well. Now I want to explore some of the more architecture related patterns and other structural patterns that we provide in version 14, and see how these work together well with the new meta model views. So assume I'd like to do some more high-level information architecture or logical modeling where I might use a UML class diagram for that. So rather than access that from a requirements management perspective, I'd be more interested in, say, UML structural diagrams, or I could access what I need from the software engineering perspective as well. So you'll notice that the model patterns provided here also really help me to zero in on one particular aspect of the structural model hierarchy. So be that associations between classes, or in fact the hierarchy, the class hierarchy itself. So I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of these patterns here under the demo sandbox again. So we'll create an association pattern and just a one-level class hierarchy, just for argument's sake. Okay, so just opening up that class hierarchy there, I want to show how we can further focus our modeling efforts by applying what we're calling a meta model view. So what that really helps me to do is apply a set of modeling conventions, if you like, to restrict the model to a certain subset of the meta model I'm using, which is UML in this case. So if I really wanted to focus just on the class hierarchy, I can apply that meta model view. So I'll just apply it now, and you'll see in the toolbox now I'm really restricted very much in terms of the relationships that are available. Also with a quick linker, when I go to drag to create a relationship to another element, I only have the generalization or specialization relationships shown. Whereas if that meta model was not applied, so if I just go back to the default meta model, you see I've got the full gamut of class related elements and relationships for UML, and I can create connected elements like so. Contrast that with the association diagram that I created. So if I applied the same meta model view, you'll notice that it actually filters out what does not fit within that meta model view. So if I try to overlay class hierarchy on my association diagram and then filter to the diagram, you'll see it actually grays out those aspects of UML that are not part of a class hierarchy. That is, they're not generalization or specialization relationships. So this actually has a useful kind of use case. If your corporate style or your project modeling conventions mandate that you just use a reduced set of the UML, a meta model view is able to help impose those standards. So you as users can also create your own meta model views, and that'll certainly be a topic for future discussion. Now I want to address something of note for the enterprise architects in the audience, because another use case that is addressed by meta model views is the ability to filter your diagrams according to a particular architectural view. So I'm going to illustrate that with an Archimate example. So I'm just going to change perspectives here out of software engineering to enterprise architecture, and I'm going to look specifically at Archimate. And you'll see among the Archimate patterns there is a layered viewpoint. So I'm just going to select that pattern, and again in my demo sandbox create a layered viewpoint and show you how we can use the meta model views to filter this diagram that's been created. So again, I open up that diagram, it's been created for me. This will be familiar to those that are using Archimate. What I want to do is again apply under the diagram properties here a meta model view, that being the layered viewpoint. Now if I filter the diagram to that meta model, you'll see that it grays out anything that does not relate to this architectural viewpoint, and so the UML packages in the background here leave, or they get filtered out, because they're not actually part of the Archimate layered viewpoint. I could change to different architectural viewpoints of interest, rather meta model views. Say for example, I just wanted the product related elements and relationships. So when I select that, you'll see that the relationships that don't fall under that architectural view are grayed out. And similarly, if I then looked at something like application usage, will grey out the elements that are not relevant and their relationships as well. So you'll also notice in version 14 that the way in which the elements and relationships are filtered out can be affected, or the display can be affected by the diagram filtering that you're used to in Enterprise Architect. So if I go to diagram filters, just bring that up on screen here, and I can choose how EA should fade out those elements and relationships, whether it be grayscale, or maybe I want to hide them completely to really simplify down the view. I can do that as well. In my case, I just want to see them faded out slightly. I want to consider meta-model views a little further now in the context of behavioral modeling. So you might be doing process modeling or state machines, that kind of thing. There are two use cases where the meta-model views can help you there. One is to prevent modeling errors, because let's face it, things like states and activities with the rounded rectangle notation can look a little bit similar. So you could use a meta model view, for example, to stop a state being accidentally added to an activity diagram. That's one. A second use case is if you're using a simulation engine for your behavioral models, well, that engine may only accept a limited subset of modeling constructs. So you may need to use a reduced set of model constructs in order to have a valid model for that simulation engine. So that's two use cases. Well, let's see how they can be addressed with the help of model patterns and meta-model views. So I want to create now a behavioral model, and so I'm not going to use the Archimate perspective to do it, rather UML behavioral, and you'll see that we have an activity model pattern there. I'm going to go ahead and instantiate that in my demo sandbox, so go and create the pattern. And it's a fairly detailed kind of pattern, so I'm just going to, here it is in the project browser here, open it up, activity with actions. Now, as I mentioned, we may want to help our users in a number of ways. Again, we may need a reduced set of activity modeling. Perhaps we just want to use a simplified set. And we also want to prevent any errors creeping in just by someone putting, say, a state on this activity diagram. So you see the toolbox there provides quite an array of activity-related elements. Well, if I use the meta model view now on top of that, I've got a simple activity meta model view, so I can choose that, and you see that it has an immediate impact on the toolbox there. It becomes a reduced set of elements, and similarly via the quick linker I have really quite an approachable set of related elements that I can create using that. Also, if I filter the diagram to this meta model view, so I can just choose the diagram background under the properties, filter to meta model, you see that anything that's not valid as part of this meta model view is instantly grayed out. And so that brings us to The other use case I mentioned, if I was using a simulation engine that for whatever reason didn't allow some of these constructs, like a parameter, for example, will I get an instant visual cue that something invalid has been placed on the diagram. So it's going to help me create more accurate and correct models in that regard. The final aspect of the model patterns that I want to address in this session relates to the new guidance patterns that we provide in version 14. So when you open the model wizard, you'll see there's a range of different tabs there that provide different kinds of patterns for certain contexts. One of those is the process guidance tab, and what that provides is a list of common tasks that you might need to carry out when using Enterprise Architect. That could be, for example, setting up a team-based model repository or a DBMS installation as it's listed here. You might also be doing various kinds of publishing, like generating documentation from your model. It could be creating new report templates, creating charts, that kind of thing. So what the process guidance gives you is a model-based process map, just step-by-step guidance with links to help and so forth, that basically guides you towards carrying out that task. So let's just take the first guidance pattern and instantiate that. So I'm going to create that guidance there. So it's a bit like a pattern, but rather than modifying it to develop or model your system, what you're doing as we open it up here, see, you're taking advantage of what is basically a checklist of things that you need to do in order to complete this task. So step one is to create a database. Well, what does that involve? The checklist tells you you need to create an empty Maria database repository. So what if I needed some more help on that? Well, you'll find that the notes, if I just bring up the notes for those elements, you find that each of those actually has a link to some online help. So you can just control click, and that'll actually bring up Enterprise Architect's online help for that part of the process. So let's assume that's done. Okay, I've created my database repository, check, and I've got a visual indication of where I'm actually up to in this. The next step, that I need to download a script for instantiating the Maria database. Well, there it is, and I've actually got a link to the registered users page where I can go and download that script. So I've done that, check, install it, and I'm away. And so this will take me step by step all the way to creating a team-based model repository using the Maria DBMS. So that's just one of many guidance patterns that we're providing. And so again, we may feature those in future sessions, but I certainly encourage you to have a look at those once the pre-release is available as well. Today we've had a closer look at the new perspectives and model patterns in Enterprise Architect 14. You've seen how they combine to help focus EA's large array of modelling technologies to suit the type of task you're working on at any given time. The meta-model views further refine your focus when editing the instantiated model patterns, and they can help you to avoid modelling mistakes by offering a subset of the relevant meta-model and highlighting elements that don't fit that view. Finally, you saw the process guidance patterns that provide a useful checklist and direction on various tasks you perform within EA. Well, this is only the second session in our EA 14 pre-release series. Scott will be with you early December to delve into the enhanced property views and explain how they'll improve your modelling experience in version 14. Until next time, happy modelling.